eBafanaBafana may be out of the FIFA eNations Stay and Play Cup, but we thought we would still recap exactly what went down in the quarterfinals recently to see which teams had advanced and potentially stood a chance of winning the grand prize. Joining me to analyze these games is professional gamer Wasim, who's also a FIFA commentator. Let's see what he had to say about the quarterfinal matchups. Wasim, interesting quarterfinals, and I think for traditional football fans, when they look at these teams that were in the quarterfinals, you've got Malta, you've got Luxembourg. These are all names that you wouldn't normally expect from countries, because we're used to the Germanys, of course, and we're used to the Swedens, but these smaller regions popping up, do you think that that's got more to do with the fact that their FIFA pros are just so good?
Yes, I think that's one of the wonderful aspects of esports, is that it brings to the four nations and regions that perhaps you wouldn't see in traditional football, and gives them the light that they deserve. And I think, special mention named we can make of Luxembourg. It's a country that we perhaps don't see much of in normal football, and perhaps in esports as well. But now in the eNations, the cup here, they seem to have made a really decent name for themselves.
Very impressive performance from them. 5-4 against Sweden. They go through to the semi-finals, but relatively unknown team. Is that always nerve-wracking as a FIFA player? We also mentioned that the Luxembourg player, a lot of people don't know, when you know you're facing up against someone in something as big as the eNations in the semi-final and you don't know the player, is that a little bit nerve-wracking? Because obviously it's very difficult to prep for your opponents.
So I think it can work both ways, right? So if you're the relative underdog, as they would call it, and you're going to a matchup against a big name player, the advantage you have over them is there's a lot of gameplay footage that you can go and check up on and research on your player. But sometimes you, as the more relatively well-known player, if you're looking at facing an underdog, there's perhaps not much research that you can do as the person who's expected to win the fixture. So that sometimes also can play a bit into a player's mind, because sometimes you perhaps don't know the type of opponent you're coming up against, and you perhaps don't know how to prep against it.
I want to jump to that first quarterfinal that we got to see, and that was, of course, Malta going up against Wales. 11-0 was the final score. Absolutely incredible performance. You actually know the Malta FIFA player quite well. I mean, you've hit him up online for some tips back in the day when you were competing.
Yeah, so Christian Spiteri is fairly well known to the FIFA community. And he's a guy that I actually messaged on Twitter, maybe a couple of months back, and asked him for some tips. And I mean, based on his result there against the Welsh pro, you can exactly see why people would be asking him for tips. I mean, fantastic FIFA player. His knowledge of football as a whole is it's just amazing. And I think the way he approaches the game is perhaps not as traditional as perhaps other players would approach it, but he's got something special in him.
When we take a look at those final two quarterfinals, no surprises, Germany and Saudi Arabia going through. Of course, eBafanaBafana played against Saudi Arabia. They knocked us out of the competition. One of the world's best playing for them. Were you surprised with that scoreline of the 2-0 though to Saudi Arabia with the FIFA pros? Because obviously the Israeli player is quite well known. Were we expecting him to maybe pull a rabbit out of the hat?
Pulling a rabbit out of the hat against an esports player, if you're an esports player, is not out of the ordinary. But when it's against someone like MS Tosare, it's a bit harder than normal.
We say that, but obviously our very own Thabo, he was able to score against him, and towards the end of his matchup in the group stages was starting to look like he could potentially net more goals. What did you think of his performance against that Saudi Arabian player?
So look, Thabo is someone that we know in the scene for a while, ever since his VS win. And I think that performance that he had against the Saudi Arabian player was probably one of the most special performances we've seen. And that just goes to show that, he has what it takes to compete. Just to touch a little bit about, he was quite high in the global series standing, would have possibly had a chance to go for one of the EA playoffs, but unfortunately, due to circumstances, it didn't happen. But I think he's someone that you really need to watch, because we're probably going to see him in one of the events very, very soon.
We now know who will advance to the semi-finals in the FIFA eNations Stay and Play Cup. Next time, I'll be joined again by Wasim as we analyze the finals and give you all those results. If you want to keep up to date with all the action, make sure you follow the hashtag eBafanaBafana.